Hi, everybody. As promised, we are here to talk about guilt. How to stop feeling guilty about aging parents' problems or spouse's problems if you are the caregiver. So, as we talked before, caregivers, through our actions of being helpful, we often take on the problems of other people and we set up unrealistic expectations until one day we realize we cannot do it anymore. And then we feel really guilty, and guilt is such a complex emotion, and sometimes we just don't even know how to deal with it. So in this video, I'm going to share why caregivers feel guilty, or why people feel guilty in any situation in life, how you can look at these guilty feelings and maybe categorize them into some buckets, and then how to decide if these feelings and these emotions are something that you created and you should be responsible for, or if this is all coming to you from the outside and it's causing you to feel guilty, and then what you can do. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support for caregivers and aging adults. I've been working in the field of caregiving and aging for more than 20 years. Please click on the links below. Follow my YouTube channel. Follow these videos, because every week I answer questions that caregivers ask, and you can feel free to ask questions in the text below these videos. You can go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com, click on the Contact Me button. There is a caregiver survey there where you can ask me to do videos on a certain topic. So let's talk about guilt. And I kind of put guilt into two buckets, right? It's things that we do that can harm or hurt other people that maybe we regret and then feel guilty about. Then there's another bucket where it's like things that we don't control that just happen, maybe because we were inattentive, right? Maybe we were involved, but we didn't think of all the consequences or what could happen. And then there's the component of somebody else doing something and putting their guilt on us. So guilt in any relationship kind of comes from people expressing their emotions and their feelings. So for some people, talking about that is really difficult. It's really challenging because, our feelings may be hurt, the feelings of the other person may be hurt. There may be a lot of disagreement there that we're not quite sure how to navigate. And so let's just use a very simple example, caregiving, right? An aging parent or spouse, you're the caregiver. They want more attention or more time for you. And you're thinking, oh, I can't do this, but you don't want to say no, so you say yes, and then it keeps going on, right? And so the expectations build. And then this person that you care for gets upset with you for silly things like, well, you bought the wrong thing at the grocery store. The food you made, like for dinner last night, wasn't as good. They want you to come visit more. They want you to move closer. Maybe your parents want to move in with you. So there's this whole list of complications in caregiving that if we start to say no instead of yes, we can feel guilty because this other person wants something from us. And then we have situations where we all have behaviors and habits, right? And these can come from, back from when we were a child, or through relationships that we have in life when we're growing up, at work, at school, things like that. But sometimes aging parents have these behaviors that children don't really notice once you move out of the house, right? Because your parents are living together. And it's likely that your dad or your mom kind of maybe manage those behaviors so that you as the children don't have to deal with them. But then when one of your parents dies, and you're left caring for the other, you're like, holy moly, I never realized that mom was so controlling, so obsessive. She's paranoid about stuff. She is narcissistic. Maybe she has a passive-aggressive behavior pattern that you're having to deal with. And maybe one of your parents has childhood issues that relate to one of their parents and how their parents treated them. So maybe your mom or dad have insecurity issues or abandonment issues. And many times caregivers recognize these and you feel like you have to solve those problems, but they're not really problems that you created. So this is the hard part, because you have to deal with your parent, right, who is acting in an angry manner towards you, or demanding, or they're being aggressive. And you're thinking, I really don't like this relationship. How am I going to deal with this? And I feel guilty that other people are going to have to deal with my parents, right? Well, here's the question. I mean, how much responsibility for resolving problems that we didn't create is the responsibility of the caregiver or the adult child? And this is a great question. And a lot of this really can depend on your family and how you were raised and what the expectations are. In some families, it's like the kids are the caregivers, not optional. This is just what you do. You're going to take care of your parents. And in other families, it's kind of like, we didn't really talk about that. And as a kid, as a child, as an adult, I'm not doing any caregiving stuff for my parents. And I'm going to make that really clear today. And that could upset your parents. So the question to manage guilt a lot of times is really more of a question about how do you manage relationships with other people so that they're balanced and not like this, right? How do you manage what other people expect from you by you setting boundaries and talking about expectations so that you don't have to feel guilty if you say no? If you say, I can't do that, right? So my recommendation is to start early with this and start with small things. Just start saying, no, I can't do that. I can do this. Don't take on projects or activities that you can do today, but that you may not want to continue. So you may say, well, yes, I can do this for you for 2 weeks, but after that, I got to get back to all of my other priorities, right? Now, the problem is, if you're watching this video, you may be well beyond that, like years beyond that, where you've been doing everything and the expectations are there, and now you feel guilty because you want to change your mind about doing this and get your life back, right? So simple ways to reconcile this. Again, if you caused harm, if you did something to somebody, apologize. You don't have to feel guilty. You can just apologize, move on, say, I'm not going to do it anymore. We all have to decide how we're going to manage these situations where there may be a tug of war about what are we going to do. And can we, as an individual, not want to always have our own way of being right, but there's this middle ground called compromise, right? What can we both work out that works for both people so that it's an equal relationship? And this really is about caregiving, right? Because a lot of times caregiving relationships become unbalanced. And this is where regret enters the picture for caregivers, because they're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have set up all these expectations. Now I got to change it and my parent's going to be upset. So rather than looking back and saying, oh, I shouldn't have done that or I shouldn't have done this, really all you have is the future. It's like, what can I do today? What can I do in the future? Because I can't change anything I've already done. Now, some people love to live in the past, and your parents or your siblings may remind you of something that you did 50 years ago that they're still upset about, and you forgot about it, but they're holding on to this grudge, right? So we can't go back and redo things. We can only deal with today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So rather than feeling guilty about wanting to make a change, agree that you have a choice and the other person has a choice. And rather than being angry at each other and creating, an adversarial relationship or a relationship where there's more conflict, let's admit that what happened in the past is the past. This is the situation today, and this is what we can do. Now, you may be there, but your parent may not be there, or somebody else may not be there. So there can be a lot of blame, people who refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. So then you have all those emotions to deal with, right? But again, go back to the present. This is what we have to work with, okay? This is what we think is going to happen in the future. How can we remove the emotions and look at the logic and say, this is what we're going to do? So as that caregiver, it's your choice to decide that you're going to feel guilty about all this, or to say, I'm going to set that aside. Let's make a plan for the future. Let's figure out what we're going to do so that it's more balanced. And when you do that, you also have to look at how much responsibility you want to take for other people's emotions and all of that. So again, you want to think differently about guilt and your relationship with guilt. because it really is a lot more than just, I did this and I should feel bad about it. You can remove guilt if you balance relationships, if you have detailed conversations about plans and you look at problem solving and decision making. And it's not that you're always going to make the right decision. We don't. We all make a lot of mistakes, right? And sometimes it causes problems. But the more thoughtful we are about our lives and our choices and the decisions that we make and the relationships that we want with other people, the less guilty we will feel about shared decision making or decisions that we make, right? Because if we had a plan and we followed it and it didn't work out, well, we had a plan. It just didn't work out the way that we wanted it to. So why feel guilty about, making a decision that you researched and that you spent a lot of time doing? There's no point in feeling guilty about it. It's like, okay, made a mistake. Let's move on. Let's go to plan B, plan C, plan D. So when you think about guilt in the bigger perspective of life, we have to choose the relationship that we want with regrets and things we did and things we didn't do and things we could have done and our relationships with other people. And if we do that, if we're more thoughtful, then this idea of guilt really doesn't really have a place in our life. We don't have to deal with guilt because we're thoughtful about what we're doing and we're trying to do the best we can. And really, that's what all caregivers do. As caregivers, we do the best we possibly can. And even if other people aren't happy with what we're doing, we're still doing the best we can. And there is no reason to feel guilty about doing the best you can in any part of your life. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Thanks for being here. Again, press the like button. Follow me here on YouTube. Go over to my website, PamelaDWilson.com. Online courses, podcast, articles, my blog. A lot of helpful information for caregivers and aging adults based on my more than 20 years of experience working in this area. Have a fabulous day today. I'll see you all again soon in another video.